In a galaxy torn by war, where humans and alien races fear each other more than they understand, one soldier meets a radiant being not with a weapon, but with hesitation. She reaches out, not to fight, but to connect. Her question is simple: "Why don't you touch me?" But his answer could change everything. What happens when a single touch defies generations of fear? When war meets empathy, and silence meets song? This is the story of a hand between stars, and the choice that could reshape the universe. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. The sky above the planet. Valeth shimmered with colors no human eye had ever seen. Two suns hovered on the edge of the horizon, bleeding golden light into the copper-tinted clouds. The ground, cracked and glittering like broken glass, stretched endlessly in every direction. Silence ruled this place, heavy, absolute, broken only by the distant crackle of dying machines. Yearned, a human scout from Earth's outer frontier core, stood alone amid the ruins. His boots crunched softly on the strange surface as he walked, his breath shallow beneath the worn edges of his helmet. He had seen battlefields before, too many, but this one felt different. This one felt like a grave. All around him were the remains of machines, tools, and weapons from both human and alien forces. Some still hummed faintly with forgotten energy. Others sparked once and died forever. The air smelled of scorched metal and ash. No birds, no winds, no signs of life. Only the eerie flicker of the twin suns above and the strange hum that seemed to rise from the ground itself. It felt as if the planet mourned its own destruction. Yearned paused near the shattered frame of what looked like a Lumari transport ship. Its walls, once sleek and silver, now lay in pieces, their edges glowing faintly with energy. He stared at the wreckage, wondering what kind of life once moved through those halls. He had never seen a Lumari up close. They were described as beings of light, fragile but advanced, peaceful until war changed everything. The official reports called them hostiles, but the stories from other scouts told a different tale of beings who sang to their technology and mourned each loss as if it were a sibling. Yearned adjusted the strap on his shoulder, his rifle hanging heavy at his side. His armor, once polished and proud, was now scratched, faded, and stained. Every step he took felt slower than the last. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was the weight of everything he had seen. Friends lost. Orders followed. Lives ended without answers. For months, maybe longer, he had fought on worlds like this where silence came too easily and questions were met with more fighting. He moved forward through the mist, each step stirring small clouds of shimmering dust. There were no clear borders here, no front lines, just debris from broken civilizations. He didn't know why he had been sent alone. Recon, maybe. Or maybe someone just forgot about him. It wouldn't be the first time. A soft breeze brushed against him, carrying with it the faintest scent of something floral, something alive. He stopped. That was when he saw her. She stepped through the smoke and fractured light as if she had always belonged to this place. She wasn't human. Her skin shimmered in waves of soft color, like pearl and moonlight woven together. Her eyes, large, gentle, and filled with something deeper than pain, met his. Her body moved with a slow grace, light flowing across her limbs like a current of stars. She didn't wear armor. She didn't carry a weapon. And yet, her presence made him lower his own rifle before he even realized it. Yearned froze. Every part of him told him to be cautious, but there was no fear in her face, no threat, only sorrow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wrapped around them like fog. Then she stepped closer, and the ground beneath her feet responded with soft, musical tones like glass bells touched by the wind. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a song. "Why do your kind not reach out?" she asked. "Why do you fear the space between us?" Yearned didn't answer. He didn't know how. Her words were clear in perfect English, but they felt older than language itself. He looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't expected. Not alien strangeness, but a sadness that mirrored his own. She raised her hand slowly, fingers slender and ending in faint crystalline points. She held it there, suspended between them, close enough to see but not to touch. "I am not your enemy," she said softly. "Not today. Not here." Jaren's heart pounded. Every memory of training shouted warnings in his mind. Never engage physically. Maintain distance. Protect the mission. But he didn't feel like a soldier now. He felt like a man who had forgotten why he ever wore the armor to begin with. He took a slow step forward, then another. Her hand stayed, outstretched, unwavering, but his own refused to rise. Not yet. He wanted to, but fear held him still, not of her, but of what it would mean if he touched her, of what it would change inside him. The silence between them stretched longer than it should have. Still, she waited. Still, she believed. Behind them, the battlefield shimmered in the light of the fading suns. Broken weapons and fallen towers watched silently as something rare unfolded. Not a fight, but the possibility of peace. Neither of them spoke again. Not yet, but something had already changed. Something had already begun. Jaren stood still, his breath shallow, eyes locked, on the strange being before him. The light from her skin flickered gently like a candle fighting the wind. Her hand remained raised between them, open and waiting. He could see each delicate line on her palm, glowing faintly with soft colors that shifted like morning clouds. She didn't speak again, but her silence was not empty. It was full of hope and fear, the kind that asked questions without words. He stared at her hand. It looked delicate, almost too delicate to belong in a place like this, surrounded by wreckage and silence. But that same hand had survived war, exile, and isolation. That same hand had reached across species and fear. Jaren wanted to lift his own hand. He wanted to reach out, to see if touching her would feel like touching light, or if it would simply feel like skin, warm, real, and alive. But something in him hesitated. Not because he didn't want to, but because it would mean something big. "I don't understand you," he said quietly, his voice hoarse from days of silence and years of war. "You're here, in the open, alone. You're not afraid I'll hurt you?" Her gaze softened, and for the first time she looked almost human. "I am afraid," she admitted. "But not of you. I'm afraid of what happens if no one tries." The words struck something deep in him. He had heard commanders talk about strategy, territory, survival. He had heard soldiers laugh and cry and scream, but he had never heard someone speak like this. Not in the middle of a battlefield, not under dying suns. She took a small step forward, her feet barely making a sound on the cracked ground. "You're not the first human I've seen," she said, her voice quiet and steady. "But you are the first to look at me and hesitate." Jaren blinked. "Others shot first?" Most never looked, just raised weapons and followed orders. Her eyes shone, reflecting twin suns and something more. A quiet storm of memories. She did not speak aloud. "But you paused." Jaren didn't know what to say. His fingers twitched. He thought of all the warnings, the briefings, the rules. No unauthorized contact. No emotional involvement. No cross-species exchange without diplomatic clearance. None of it mattered now. Not here. Not with her. "What's your name?" he asked. She tilted her head slightly, as if surprised by the question. "I am called Meryl." It was a soft name, light on the tongue, and it suited her. Jaren repeated it quietly, more to himself than to her. Meryl, a name that didn't belong to an enemy or a threat, but a person. "I'm Jaren," he said. "I don't have any orders right now, just survival." "Then let's start there," she whispered. with survival. And something more, if you allow it. Their eyes met again, and this time the silence between them felt warmer. But, just as Yearned's hand began to rise, a sharp sound cracked through the air, like metal tearing, but louder, deeper, like it came from the bones of the world itself. Both turned their heads. Above them, a rip in the sky opened, stretching wide like a wound. From it, a dark shape descended, smooth and unnatural. It wasn't a Lumari ship, and it wasn't human. It was something else. The craft landed without a sound, its surface shifting, like water, reflecting nothing. A door opened, spilling a shadow across the ground. From the darkness stepped a figure wrapped in a cloak that moved as if alive. Its face was covered by a smooth, black mask that gave back no reflection. Not of Yearned, not of Meryl, not of the world around it. Meryl stepped back, fear flashing across her face. "No," she breathed. "They shouldn't be here." Yearned raised his weapon instinctively, stepping between her and the figure. "Friend. Of yours?" She shook her head quickly. "No, it's not here for peace. It feeds on what breaks us." The figure began to move forward, slow and steady. When it spoke, its voice was layered, like many voices speaking at once. "You reach across the stars with hope. That is your mistake." Yearned felt the air grow colder, though the sun still shone. His fingers tightened on his weapon, but some part of him knew it would be useless. This creature wasn't here to fight. It was here to remind them that fear still ruled the universe. Meryl placed a hand on Yearned's arm. "It doesn't understand what connection means. To it, touching is rebellion. Love is a threat." The figure stopped a few steps away, tilting its head slightly. "Why do you hesitate, human? Her light will dim, yours will flicker. Nothing survives." Yearned didn't answer the figure. He turned to Meryl instead. Her hand found his again, not touching, not yet, but closer now. He could feel the warmth between them, the space shrinking. And then he understood. The gesture wasn't just about comfort. It was about resistance, about proving that even across galaxies, across fear and misunderstanding, two beings could choose to meet in the middle. Not because they were the same, but because they dared to care. Slowly, Yearned lifted his hand. Just a little more, just enough to close the gap. The sky above them trembled, the ground hummed, and Meryl's eyes filled with light. Yearned's hand hovered inches from Meryl's, the warmth between them as real as the broken battlefield beneath their feet. Then the darkness shifted. The figure from the ship stepped closer, its movements smooth but strange, like a shadow pretending to be human. The silence around them changed, no longer peaceful but tight and sharp, like the world was holding its breath. Yearned kept his weapon raised, though a voice inside him whispered it wouldn't. Help. This new presence didn't belong to any army he'd ever heard of. It didn't move like a soldier. It didn't speak like one either. The cloaked being stopped a few feet from them, and though its face was hidden, Yearned could feel its gaze. Heavy, cold, measuring. Meryl stood still, her glow dimming slightly. Her hand lowered to her side, and her expression changed from curiosity to something closer to dread. Yearned had seen fear before, but this was different. This was recognition. "You know what that thing is?" he asked without taking his eyes off the figure. She nodded slowly. "I hoped never to see it. It comes when peace tries to grow. It feeds on fear, on the moments just before hope becomes real." The figure's voice echoed again, layered and deep, impossible to trace to any one mouth. "You reached out, little soldier. You almost touched her. Why?" Yearned said nothing. He didn't owe this thing answers. Meryl stepped forward. "We are not your concern. You make yourselves my concern when you try to change what should not change," it said. "You forget your place." Its words weren't shouted, yet they carried a force that pressed against Yearned's chest like a weight. Meryl didn't step back, though the dimness in her skin deepened. "This is not your world," she said quietly. "You come from the space between stars where nothing lives." "I am what remains when life turns away from truth," it replied. I exist where connection fails. Jaren narrowed his eyes. You talk a lot, but you haven't done anything. What do you want? The figure tilted its head again. To remind you that touching her hand means more than a simple gesture, that joining your fate to hers comes at a cost. Meryl looked at Jaren, her eyes soft again. He's right. In a way. If you touch me, if we choose each other, everything changes. There's no undoing it. Jaren thought about the hundreds of rules he had followed since the war began, about all the orders he never questioned. He'd never stopped to ask why they were fighting. Now standing beside Meryl, with this creature watching, he realized the fight was never just about survival. It was about fear, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control. Maybe change is what we need, he said, lowering his weapon. Maybe that's the point. The figure stepped closer. Then let me show you what your choice leads to. Without warning, the ground shifted. The battlefield dissolved beneath their feet, melting into light and shadow. The twisted metal, the shattered machines, the scorched earth, all of it vanished. In its place rose a vast field of mirrors, each one reflecting different scenes. In one, Jaren saw Earth in flames. In another, Meryl lay crumpled on the ground, her light extinguished. In yet another, a fleet of ships, neither human nor Lumari, descended on peaceful cities. Every mirror showed a possible future, each more painful than the last. These are not prophecies, the figure said. They are possibilities. When you choose connection, you invite chaos. Jaren's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, staring into the mirrors. And if we choose fear, what do you show us then? The figure paused. For the first time, it seemed unsure. If you choose fear, you remain where you are, unchanged, safe, alone. Meryl walked to Jaren's side. She took his hand, not fully, just a brush of her fingers. Even that small contact sent warmth through his arm. Is that really safer? She asked. To be alone forever? Jaren looked at the mirrors again, then turned to face the figure. You're not here to protect us. You're here to stop us. But you're afraid too. You fear what happens if we stop being afraid. The figure's voice lowered, almost a whisper. Touch her hand, and the universe shifts. Maybe it needs to, Jaren answered. Then, without speaking, he reached out and took Meryl's hand. The light that exploded around them wasn't bright or painful. It was soft, like sunlight through clouds. It spread outward in a quiet wave, pushing against the darkness. The mirrors cracked and faded. The figure took a step back, its cloak flickering like smoke in wind. Meryl's glow returned, brighter than before. Jaren felt her hand tighten in his, not in fear, but in trust. The world around them returned, not as it was, but something new. The wreckage was gone. The land beneath their feet pulsed with gentle life. The cloaked figure stood on the edge of the field, smaller now, less sure. You've made your choice, it said. Let's see if you survive it. Then it vanished. Jaren turned to Meryl. What happens now? She looked up at the twin suns which had started to merge in the sky. Now we wait, and we hope the universe listens. The light from the twin suns had shifted. They no longer burned in opposite corners of the sky, but now hovered closer, their golden glow blending into one another. Jaren stood quietly, still holding Meryl's hand. The warmth between them remained steady and alive, as if the ground beneath their feet now breathed with them. The battlefield they had known, with its broken machines and lost cries, was gone. In its place stretched a plain of soft glowing grass, swaying in a breeze that hummed like a distant lullaby. The air felt different, not heavy with ash or fear, but light and calm, like the world had finally exhaled. Jaren looked at Meryl, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. There were no more enemies, no more orders, no more voices telling them who to be or what lines not to cross. All that remained was a sense of stillness, gentle, powerful, and unfamiliar. He had never felt anything like it before. Not in the bunkers of Earth, not in the silence between missions. This was peace, not just around them, but inside them too. Meryl's glow shimmered softly. Her skin reflected the light of the merged suns, casting ripples of color across the ground. But her face carried a quiet concern. She was no longer afraid of Jaren or of being seen. Now she feared what might come next. The figure in the black cloak was gone, but its words still lingered like dust in the corners of memory. Let's see if you survive it. The moment of choice had passed. Now came the consequence. Far in the distance, the horizon began to ripple, not like heat rising from sand, but like the world itself was bending. Shapes emerged from the shimmer. Tall, graceful figures made of light and shadow walked toward them, their movements silent and fluid. Jaren felt no fear, only curiosity. He could sense that these beings were not like the one that had tried to stop them. These were different, calmer, older, and wiser. Meryl stepped forward, still holding his hand. "My people," she whispered, "or what remains of them." The figures formed a circle around the two of them. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, with eyes that burned like stars. It looked first at Meryl, then at Jaren. Its voice was deep but not threatening. "You have done what many feared to try. You reached across the line that divided us." Jaren swallowed hard. "I didn't do it to make a statement. I did it because it felt right." The figure nodded. "That is why it matters." The others around them bowed their heads, a silent gesture of respect. The leader continued. "You touched, not just hands but paths, lives, fates. By doing so, you have pulled a thread in the fabric of what is." Meryl stepped forward. "And what will come of it?" The figure looked up at the sky. The suns were still merging, their light, now forming a perfect sphere. "Change," the figure said. "Whether it leads to healing or collapse depends on what follows." Another ripple passed through the field, but this time it wasn't frightening. It was like the world was adjusting to a new shape. Jaren could feel it too, in his chest, in his thoughts. Something had shifted inside him the moment he touched Meryl's hand. He didn't see her as alien anymore. She wasn't a mystery to be solved, or a risk to be avoided. She was a person, full of fear and hope, just like him. The figure reached out and placed its hand lightly on Meryl's shoulder. "You carried the risk. You made the invitation. Now you must help others understand why it was worth it." Meryl nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I will." The leader then turned to Jaren. "And you, child of Earth, you broke a rule written in silence. Will you share what you felt?" Jaren took a breath. "I'll try. I don't know how to explain it yet. But if others feel what I did, maybe they'll want peace too." The figure smiled gently. "That is enough." One by one, the luminous beings began to fade, their forms dissolving into strands of light that floated up toward the sky. Jaren and Meryl watched as the last of them vanished, leaving behind only the whisper of their presence and the sense that something larger had just witnessed them. The sky above had changed completely now. The two suns had become one, brighter and softer. The stars had begun to appear, but not like before. Some were familiar, like constellations Jaren had seen from Earth. But others were new, strange patterns that hinted at stories still waiting to be told. Meryl looked at Jaren, her voice quiet. "We've started something." He nodded. "Yeah, but where does it go?" She smiled. "That depends on us." They stood together as the wind danced around them, carrying scents of wildflowers and distant rain. The world no longer looked like a battlefield. It looked like the first page of a story yet to be written. Jaren didn't know what came next, and for the first time that didn't scare him. Whatever waited ahead, he wouldn't face it alone. Hand in hand, they began to walk forward. Each step echoed softly across the glowing plain, a rhythm that was no longer shaped by war or fear, but by the quiet power of a single shared choice. The choice to reach out, the choice to connect. the choice to believe in something better.